Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning who is really in the wrong. Let's dive in together. The first story for this collection is from Pretend-Response 3728. AITA for cutting ties with my mom who married a man who abused me and groped my sister-in-law. My mother, 49, divorced from my father when I was 6. In 2014, when I was around 15 out of 16, my mother met a man, Gordon. She worked as a reception for a doctor, and she says she has known Gordon for years as a patient at the doctor. He had been coming in recently for mental health medication because his wife had sadly passed from cancer, and the two got close. Gordon is 10 years older than my mum, who was 38 or 39 at the time. The first time I met Gordon, he was in the lounge, and he asked me to put a bikini on to look at my figure, as he could tell I went to the gym. Over the next year, he would repeatedly ask. He would ask to see my abs both when my mum was, and wasn't there. He asked if I was a virgin. If I had friends over, he would come into the room, ask them how old they were, and ask if they were virgins. He would tell me how beautiful I was, and my mother saw nothing wrong when I would tell her I didn't like him. One day, I was in my bedroom, and I heard him come up the stairs. I was upstairs alone. He walked into my bedroom without knocking, and I ran to the door. We were face to face, and he kissed me on my neck. I froze, and he asked me to lift my top up. I said no. He asked again and again, saying, "Oh, go on, just quick, lift your top up." I said no, he was being weird, and he needed to go away. I shut my door and got changed, and left the house. I went to meet my BF at the time, and in conversation said, "Gordon has just been so weird," and relayed the story. My ex immediately rang my father, and it spirals. I go back to get my school uniform and I tell my mum. She goes to talk to Gordon, comes back to me and says, "You've taken it out of context. Don't ever come back." She kicks me out. A few years go by. Social services have a peak because I break down in school. My mum tells them she's left him, so they allow me to go home. My maternal family turn on me, saying he isn't that much of a threat, and I was being ridiculous. Mother continues her relationship, but is never home. She takes the childhood dog to him constantly. Our relationship is beyond strained. He then gropes my brother's wife. She calls me crying. I raise it with my mum. She kicks me out again at 17. I lived out of my car until I was 20, sofa surfing between houses and my ex who didn't like me very much. I lost all my college work and fought to get into university. I would eat slices of bread for meals. When I was 20, I got a number of texts from Gordon. "I've broken up with your mum, LOL. Come round to mine tonight. You've got juicy lips, are they real?" I called my dad and blocked him. I then had overwhelming sadness for my mum. I reached out to her and we got back into contact. No apologies, just carrying on like it's nothing. When she kicked me out at 17, all my mum's family cut me off too, which was wonderful. I should say none of his behavior is disputed to this day. Present day. I have a house, a post-grad job, and a dog. I am settled. My mother was an active part of my life, and my fiancé, Derek. Over the last 12 months, she has mentioned Gordon in pieces, suggesting he had changed, and I would become angry and remind her what he did to me. My fiancé, who never met him, wishes him nothing but misery because he knows how much I went through. Derek told my mother, in no uncertain terms, that he would be happy if he stopped existing because it tortures me. She then 12 months ago mentioned she was paying off the remainder of her mortgage, lending this off her parents. Okay? Cool. There were many mentions of him over the last 2 years, but in September she had been away to Spain in an area she has an apartment. She told me she bumped into him twice. I asked if she had been texting him. She said no. I asked her what was going on and got angry. I told her I hated him. Then a week later she says, "Don't get angry," but he came round to clear the drains, and I threw my cup of tea on the table. I shouted and I cried, and I called her a traitor. She said, "Well, I didn't have to tell you," and I blew up. I asked her what was going on. She said nothing. I asked her again. She said nothing. I told her to leave, and I knew deep down, but I was still in denial. My brother, and now wife, groped girlfriend, just had a baby girl. I couldn't let this man near my niece if this is true. I tried to get her to come over to talk, and she kept canceling. I told her down the phone, and in person, if she wants him in her life, I can't be, and that it wasn't an ultimatum, but I was setting boundaries. She said I was being unfair to her. I asked her to answer my question, that is, what the hell is going on? And she responded, well, I'm just upset you would cut me off so easy. For 3 weeks I chase her and keep this secret for her because I know what my brother will do. He would cut her off and stop her seeing her grandchild. She is supposed to come the first Sunday in October and cancels last minute again. I ring her and demand she tells me. She tells me she's seeing him and I hang up the phone. I call my nan, her mother. I ask if she knew, she says no. I ask again, she says yes. And I call my brother and tell him. My brother goes to speak to her. She cancelled the Sunday because she was tired, having been to a party with Gordon. It also turns out Gordon gave the money to my mum to pay off her mortgage last year. She asked my brother to hide this from me. I called her a liar. She said she was bending the truth. I haven't seen her for 7 weeks and she texted last night saying it's over for good and he doesn't want the money back. I need to speak to you and brother. She sends this to both of us. I don't feel I can forgive her, even if she's cut him off. I don't trust her. She lied to me and the ultimate betrayal I feel. So my question is, even though she says she's cut him off, AITA for saying the damage is done. Goodbye? OP is not an AH. Rather, her mom is an AH for prioritizing a predatory man over her daughter's safety, for dismissing her trauma, and for rekindling relationship with him. So I would rate OP's mom 4.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP's decision to cut ties with her mom is 100% justified. She is not an AH, and I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from infinite_loss_3037. AITA. For getting an apartment and not telling my husband I'm moving out? We've been married for 1.5 years. Before we got married, he caught me texting my ex. I immediately cut ties with my ex. But since then, my husband is obsessed with my ex. For 2 years, he says things like, why don't you call your ex and see if he will come help you? Maybe your ex will take you back since you won't take the trash out. I get it. I broke his trust, and I deserved the treatment he has been giving me. In the last 6 months, he has gotten so much worse. He has threatened to call the cops and have me arrested because I pushed him back after throwing items that belong to my children and said I assaulted him. I know what I did was wrong. I have spent over 2 years dealing with it and trying to make it up for being unfaithful. At what point is enough, though? Do I deserve to be belittled in front of my kids? Do I deserve to be told that I'm the reason I can't hang out with my friends because they may allow me to go be with another man? I have lost all my individualism because I was texting my ex only a couple months after we broke up, and I still getting items from his house. I know I'm the AH when it comes to the beginning and texting my ex, but after 2 years, if there is still no trust, should I stay or go? I started looking for an apartment and got one first try. Won't be ready for another month, and at which time I need to pay rent and security deposit, so I've been putting all my money aside to pay for it. I asked my husband 3 weeks ago why he married me. He responded with repeating the question and asking me, which I had written down so I could hand it to him. I said I asked first, in which he replied, because I love you. I said, but why? Nothing. He stopped talking about it and nagged me for not taking the trash out after making dinner and doing dishes. I feel more like a slave than a spouse most days. I finally gave him the piece of paper with the reasons I married him, which most of those are now the reason I want to divorce him. I don't feel safe or confident in sharing anything with him because he tells his friends. Like, I told him I tried butt stuff once because it was a conversation, and I said I don't want to ever do it again, but because I did it. I was able to find out a medical thing I was having and had surgery. About a month later, we were in the bar and he told his friends and I was the butt of the joke all night. I mentioned it to him and how it made me feel, and said that I deserved it because I was talking to my ex behind his back. Every once in a while, it is brought up. Even for my birthday last year, I got a butt plug as a joke. He never responded to the paper. He read it and said thanks. It has been 3 days, and I am boiling inside because even after being vulnerable and allowing myself to let him know, he still, aside from saying, I love you, have any reason why to be married to me. Love isn't enough at this point. I'm done being his punching bag and him always saying I deserve it after 2 years. Should I tell him I'm moving out in a month? Or just tell him after I get the keys? AITA? Edit. I have known my husband for 6 years prior to being married. I was talking to my ex about getting items from his house. how the phone bill was going to work, getting the utilities out of my name, getting the lease out of my name. My husband asked me to not talk to him, and I was, so I lied about being in communication with him. He thought my friend was talking to him for me. I was not dating my husband before I moved out. My ex and I had been broken up, but living together for 3 months, prior to me leaving also. Update. I want to start off by saying I did not have an emotional affair or any kind of affair with my ex after moving out, just finalizing all the breakup stuff from living together. Here we are, a little over a month, and I've been in my apartment for almost a month now. It got harder to continue biting my tongue, knowing I was going to be leaving. It wasn't supposed to be ready till beginning of November, but they finished it earlier. The week before I got the keys, we had a blowout over getting fast food for our hungry children after a sporting event. They got their food and went home. His daughter had gone back to her mother, and I have my children more than he does, by about 17 days a month. The following weekday, he took the day off without my knowledge and brought home an old car that he just had to buy. He wasn't home when we had gotten home. He was at the bar, and I was stunned he went without me, and when I have my children. His thing was always we never go to the bar without each other. Apparently, it was only me not allowed to go without him. We got into an argument over how he couldn't buy fast food for our kids, but he has no problem going out and buying a car without consulting me. How he had went to the bar, and if I had done that, I would have gotten in trouble by him and consequences to me going. He went on telling me how it is different, because I have responsibilities, and his doesn't live with us. So I said I'm leaving, I can't handle this anymore, and how it is okay for you to do A, B, C, and I can't go anywhere. I don't think he thought I was serious even after bringing home boxes and having my children pack their stuff. I pulled into the driveway with 7 people and a up-haul, and we loaded all of my belongings and my children's, and I moved. He helped pack it up, but didn't come over to my new place until he decided to surrender our dog to me, as he doesn't have time for him. We agreed to continue to date. We went out for my birthday, but I said I wanted to take separate vehicles. He wasn't happy about that, but I'm glad I did. One of my friends came, and all his did. They wouldn't talk to me, acknowledge me, and they did a birthday shot and wished me a happy birthday while I was in the bathroom, and didn't even have an extra for me. So I left with my GF and her husband. I didn't say bye to anyone, and a fight ended up breaking out because I didn't say bye to my friends and said bye to a few others. My husband accused me of meeting up with another man because I was definitely not going to his place. When I explained to him how I was treated, including how he treated me, he responded with, "Nobody knew how to act about our situation." I asked him if he told them the truth about how I moved out because of the way he treated myself, my children, and that I had enough of trying to talk to you and you not taking accountability for anything. He said if I acted like the other wives and be seen and not heard, that maybe they would have talked to me. PSA, if you are married to someone who doesn't allow you to be yourself, leave. We've been amicable, agreed on what he is keeping and what I am keeping. He just wanted us off his health insurance. I've been better, more relaxed, and my children are happier. I'm more confident in my position at work that I had been so doubtful on since I was promoted. I haven't felt like I'm in survival mode anymore. I'm living again, broke because starting over and buying things over again has really sucked. I've been reconnecting with friends that I hadn't seen or spoken to since we married. I'm crocheting, reading, having conversations with my children that they didn't feel comfortable talking about when we lived with him. I found me again. The few interactions we have had, he accuses me of leaving for another man. He has driven by my new place, and I have it on surveillance in case he wants to be a jerk. A friend of mine that I've known since elementary school asked me what we had in common and what made me want to marry him. The more I sat there and thought, because I couldn't think of anything other than my family, thought this is what I needed and whom I needed to marry and be with. He's been at the bar almost daily because I'll get text messages from people who see him, or I'll get drunk texts from him trying to start an argument. I spoke with his ex-wife because I was wondering how his child is doing with everything going on. She expressed that they are happier that they aren't forced to spend more time with their dad anymore. She said the situation sucks, and she wished he had changed from when they were married. I asked her what she meant. She proceeded to tell me that her children were never good enough, and he nitpicked them. She said she couldn't chew gum because there would be consequences if she did. He accused her of having an affair with every person she came in contact with. I just sat there, in awe. She asked how my children were doing with the change, and I expressed their change in behavior and the activates they loved doing. They are doing them again, unapologetically. It was refreshing to know that 10 years ago, she made the same decision I had made today. I can't wait until the divorce is final and I'm free. I'll live paycheck to paycheck before I would ever go back. OP is not the AH for moving out without telling her toxic husband. OP's texting to her ex-boyfriend is wrong. And for this, I would rate OP 0.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. However, it does not in any way justify her husband's ongoing abusive and manipulative behavior. OP's husband is an AH, and I would rate him 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from studious_student12. AITA, for wanting to tell my best friend how bad of a friend she's being? This past winter, I moved into an apartment with my best friend and her boyfriend. Everything was fine until we moved to a different apartment. All three of us moved together. I was getting terrible hours at work. Had just left a very bad situation in the city I lived in before moving in with my best friend, and life had just caught up with me. I at the time was getting used to my new normal and was having a very hard time. I was sad and felt like I was useless. I kept to myself for a while, 2-ish months. I still would go here or there with my roommates every once in a while, and was very nice with them. But mainly I needed to be alone. My roommates apparently decided to buy a house. It's 4 months after we moved into our second apartment. And I was surprised because we had just moved. They asked me to move with them and told me they hoped I would want to. I was okay with that. It would be closer to my work and I wouldn't be out of place to live. My roommates told me it was a 3-bedroom house. They told me I could only have a choice at one bedroom that was downstairs, and I couldn't take the upstairs one because it is right next to them, and they wanted privacy. The bedroom that was offered to me was very small. I'm talking could fit a queen-size bed if you didn't shut the door, and the bedroom didn't have a closet. This is some backstory. This entire past year, I've been struggling with my POAS car. It's a 2016, so shouldn't be too bad, but multiple oil leaks makes for a really expensive bill. I got my car repaired. $2,000 later, it's still leaking oil from somewhere. My friend told me I can live at her house, but can't park my car there because of the oil leak. She said, "I'm not saying you can't live there. You just can't park your car there. I don't know what you're going to do." I told her that puts me in a hard spot. At this point, I'm left with 1 month to either fix my car or find a new place to live. Which not wanting an oil stain on your driveway is valid, but there are ways around that. Anyways, life goes on. I'm working a lot more now and I'm stressed too because I have a month to find a way to work my shit out. And I was gone for about 1 week because of family events and prior commitments I had. All in this time, I'm moving stuff to my parents because IDK where to live and I need a place to put my stuff. One day, she asks me if I'm okay and goes on to say that we are better friends when we don't live together and that she doesn't want me to live with her and her boyfriend. She said there is tension between us. Friends being friends when they don't live together is totally valid, but I didn't know anything was wrong at all. She again asks me if I'm okay a few days later. I said I have no time to figure anything out, and I'm stressed. She said, "Well, we have to pay next month's rent, so if you need, you can stay here that month. You will just be responsible for that entire month's rent of $3,000, which I feel is crazy. Their buyout fee is $3,500 plus the next month's rent. Which they didn't make me pay any of that, but I needed to stay an extra month. She wanted me to pay $3,000 in full. More backstory. In the past, we planned to move to Florida together, and I paid to get out of my lease to move. A week before moving, she told me she didn't want to move. So back then, I also was put in a housing situation because of her. I'm outgoing and weird. Sometimes I say things and do things, but that's what makes life fun. She always tells me I'm stupid. For example, I'll be like, "I wonder what the cat is thinking." And she says, "He probably thinks you're stupid." Or when I told her I got stung by a jellyfish on vacation, she goes, "The people around you were probably like, look at this stupid girl getting stung by a jellyfish." Like, I know I'm funny and do stupid things, but the things I do are in good fun and do not harm anyone. I do have my together and can hold my own. I just feel so small around her. Her saying stuff like this is very common. This wasn't just a one-time thing, these are just 2 examples. AITA, for wanting to talk friend to friend and just simply say, "Hey, I don't know what you want with this friendship, but this is how I feel." These decisions not only affect you, but you have a third party here that you should think about before making these types of decisions. And it isn't the first time I've been burned by you regarding housing. I would never hold her back from anything in life ever, a house or anything. But I do think 3,000 USD for next month's rent is crazy. And just the little things like how she changed her mind so fast. I'm just trying to understand it, and I'm wondering how I should approach this situation with her. OP is not an AH for feeling hurt by her friend's dismissive behavior. Demanding rent is another thing, but belittling your friend cannot be justifiable. OP's wanting clarity and expressing her feelings is completely valid. As for scores, I would rate OP's friend 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now jump on to the next story from Immediate Dashimu, 9057. AITA for confronting my grandfather for kicking out my 17-year-old sister. So, some backstory first. My mother and father split about 6 to 7 years ago. My mother got custody of us. About 3 years ago, I moved back in with my dad, who lives with my grandmother, in a 3-bedroom house. It was mainly just to take care of her, and for the ease of it. Balkan background. It's a pretty normal living circumstance for us. Anyway, my mother died about 3 months ago. I have a younger brother, 18, who wanted to go off on his own and found some housing for now. But we needed somewhere for my 17-year-old sister. My mother's side of the family discussed it and decided my grandpa could take her in as he has a spare bedroom and lives by himself. My sister is fairly independent and has her own job while going to school, but she's always been a bit quiet and doesn't talk much. Anyway, my first red flag was when I went to see my sister the first day she moved there. I went to check up on her as she lives about 5 to 10 minutes away. I went and knocked. We went to her room and chatted a bit, and then my grandfather gets back. He seemed a bit annoyed, but we chatted, and then I left. The next day, I get a message from him saying that it was weird that I was in my sister's bedroom with the door closed, and no one should be allowed in there except for her. I thought this was pretty disrespectful, and kind of kept my distance from him since then. Since then, they had some fights about her not leaving her room, and her not talking, saying good morning, etc. Anyway, a couple days ago I got a message from my sister saying that she got kicked out. So I went straight to the house to see what was going on. I asked what had happened, and I didn't want no bullshit story, just the truth. He told me she hadn't done what she was told. She was being disrespectful, and that she still wasn't talking much. He didn't give examples, so I pushed further. The one example he gave me was she didn't fold the towels the way he liked. So I just said in a slightly annoyed voice that I think he was a human, and he was a spineless coward of a human. I found out a couple days before this from my sister that he was planning to try to get me to sign a paper to get rid of all rights to what was left over of my mother's estate, and that if I didn't accept it, he would take me to court to try and convince a judge I was estranged from her. Personally, I don't want any of the money as I don't need it. I just want a say in how it's spent so no dumb decisions are made with it. He also said some personal attacks against me as well as some other kind of weird subjects I won't discuss. I then asked him why he doesn't trust me in the first place. And he said because of me touching his phone when we were signing documents in a bank, and he had to use his phone. He isn't very good with electronics, so I held my hand out in a motion to put his phone in my hand so I could do it for him, which he didn't object to. He also got mentioned another instance where we had an appointment and asked for an hour warning beforehand, which he agreed to. He then gave me a 30 minutes warning and got annoyed when I came 15 minutes late because there was no parking where he said there was. So I had to go 2 blocks down. Both these cases he classed as me being disrespectful towards him. I've also found out that he has said some very low-key jokes to her that kind of creeped her out, and weird followings on social media and such. So that would explain her not really wanting to talk to him that much. Anyway, now most of the parents on my mother's side of the family refuse to talk to me. My brother and most of my cousins are pretty much on my side though, as I voice recorded all of my interaction with him. My dad's out of the country right now, so we have a room for her to stay in, but it's not permanent. I'm more than glad to sleep in the living room need be, and she gets my room. The reason this ticked me off is because there were no warnings given, just straight to the nuclear option, and no options were discussed. She was just told to leave by the end of the month. OP is not an AH for standing up to his grandfather's unfair treatment of and inappropriate behavior towards his sister. OP did nothing wrong here, so he is not an AH, and I would rate him 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP's grandfather, he is an AH, and I would rate him 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. What do the MacReddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to MacReddit for a daily dose. Bye bye, see you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.